So, my friends, our masterclass is almost finished. Here we have just to do the handles. One I have already done. You can see it. Now I will show you how to do the handle. For this bag you need 2 handles. I'll show you how to make a handle, how to cast on, how to make the handle, and how to sew it to the bag so that you get such a handle to your bag. So first of all, we start working in 2 strands. We cast on 5 chains and 1 chain for the next row. So 1, I'm using crochet hook number 8, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 stitch for lifting to a new row. First row, as always, we work into the back half loop here. So here is the first back half loop, here it is. So we will insert the hook into this half loop. And go on working with the single crochets. First row is ready. Make a chain to start a new row and make the second row with single crochets. In the second row, don't forget that we need to make a transition from the first to the second. Here, make this loop a little bit longer so that the row is even. And so, like this, you go on working, neither too tight nor too loose. We work back and forth. This is a handle. Remember that it should be dense so that it doesn't stretch too much. And we make 54 rows in total. Or you can make it wider. I mean longer, that is, yeah, you can make it longer if you need a longer handle. So my handle will be about 64 centimeters, that is 54 rows. For me, that's enough. If you want to make it longer than this, then you can make more rows, or less if you want to make it shorter. So here you make the number of rows you need, and we'll meet. I'll show you how to adjust it to the bag. So the base for the handle is ready. Here we need to hide the free ends first. I'll show you one example so that you can do all the rest. So choose at once which side is going to be the right side, which is going to be the wrong side. Here I have always right side, where I can start counting with pairs of rows, where I can see pairs of rows. And the wrong side will have half of a pair here. So insert the hook on the wrong side, pull these free ends through several stitches along the edge. Puffy stitch is really soft and it's easy to hide, as you see. When you hide, it's absolutely invisible because it's so fluffy. Here it's really easy to hide. So like this, several stitches, then you sew it and cut the end. Now I'll show you how I sew. First I make several stitches here into the seam where I have hidden this end. Several stitches will do, just to make sure it will remain put. Then you cut the edges, cut these ends, and you sew these ends here several times to prevent them from fraying. It's important for the handles. If you see that it is fraying, just take it off and it will not be fraying anymore when you have sewn it. Here, take off everything that has frayed. And that's it, several more stitches and it will be ready. So like this, you sew all the three ends and then we can sew it to the back. To find the place on the back and sew the handle to it, we need a darning needle. It can be plastic darning needle, where you can easily insert this yarn. About 1 meter of yarn will do. And now have a look. I have sewn it into 3, so I have skipped 3 stitches from this side seam. Yeah, I have counted 3 stitches and place it into the 4th here after the 4th stitch, and here the edge will be right along 4th stitch, so that you can see 1, 2, 3. Yeah, and that's for you to see on this side likewise. So I'll turn it to the other side and we will find a place on this side to sew our handles. Likewise, I count 3 stitches that I skip. And by the way, here we go 3 pairs, that is 6 rows, 6 stitches down and 3 stitches to the right. And put the handle here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Find 1, 2, 3, 4. So place it into the 4th stitch. Insert the needle under the upper half loops, and so that here we have to make stitches after the 6th row. After the 6th row, insert the needle here and make the 1st stitch. We return it back into the base, 1 stitch below, so 1 stitch will be here and also here, so the width of our stitch is now 1 row. So the 1st stitch is ready. And then you need to pierce your needle here into this opening. One step below, yeah, then the stitch that you have just made. Like this. And so here you also make 1 row lower than you done before. So 1 stitch is 1 row, next stitch, next row. And come back 1 row up. And here also 1 row up. Now we have made 2 stitches. Now we go to the 3rd row. Here 1 row down, and here also 1 row, 1 2 3, 3rd row, yeah, down. Now we go up here and up there. So you move then down, then up, down, then up. Like this you make super strong stitching. Make sure that the rows on the handle are the same as the rows here on the base. They match. Of course, maybe the handle is a little bit more tight than the base, but you can stretch it. It's not a problem here. And then again, go up. And then we go 1 step down and then up. And then again 1 step down and then up. Here along the 6th row, pierce into the lower corner and then go up. Here, make sure that this lower braid is along the row here, and come back. So now we move along this row. Here we'll make stitch into stitch. Just insert the needle into the next stitch here, so each stitch on the handle matches each stitch on the base. And it will be 1 to 1. Insert the needle here into the next stitch and we pierce it accordingly on the handle. Here also 1 stitch. So we sew stitch to stitch. And then we make a next stitch on the base and insert it into the next stitch on the handle, like this. Move till the end of this row. Come back. So we kind of make the back stitch. And then make 1 stitch here ahead and insert it into the next stitch here. Come back again. Next stitch here and next stitch on the handle. And make a stitch back. So now we have to make the last row here to fix our handle. So let's have a look where we have finished here. Then we will go along this line one step ahead, that is up here, one step up, pierce it through the handle, and also we make stitches one by one along this line. Come back into the corner and go on working back stitch. Again, go up one stitch and then back. Here, stitch by stitch. One stitch up on the handle and here as well. So control that rows are matching, one next to the other. So we have sewn first part of the handle, that's ready. This seam looks really nice and absolutely invisible. Now we cut the free end, then I'll show you how to hide the free ends like we usually do. So now we need to sew the other side of the handle. Likewise, absolutely we count 3 stitches here and put our handle along the 4th stitch, along the edge of the 4th stitch here. Plus, don't forget that the rows should be one next to the other on the handle, and on the base they are matching. 6 rows here, 2 by 2. Insert the needle first here under the upper half loops on the base through the handle here. Upper corner, upper right corner of the last stitch of the 6th row here. Have a look that the pattern matches, pattern on the handle matches pattern on the base, and so we go on working with a back stitch along one row here, going down and then up, and on the handle and on the base make sure that the pattern is matching. Now the next stitch, go one row down on the base and one row down on the pattern. And then we will come back. So you see here, if we look at this stitch, we make it the lower corner of this stitch and one stitch here. Again, go one row down and the same on the handle. Pierce one row up and again one row down and through the handle. here into the corner of this 6th row stitch, and here also into the corner. Here you see sometimes this happens that the yarn starts freeing, but I hope it will do till I have to finish this row. So now we'll move along this edge horizontally along the edge on the base, along the horizontal edge on the base as well. Make 1 stitch ahead and then backwards, 1 stitch ahead and then backwards. So ordinary back stitch. Now we go up along the row of the stitches, along the edges, yeah, of the stitches in each row. Insert in the corner, go 1 stitch down. So here just follow 1 line so that the row is nice and straight. Here you see my cord has already frayed, but I hope that it will do till I finish it. So you see I still have some cord left. And the last stitch here. Like this. So that's it, we have sewn the handles, and we need to make it like this. I'll show you how to form its shape. We take a piece of cord, 1 strand. I'm going to use a smaller hook, number 6. So here we need to skip 8 rows. Start from the beginning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Skip 8 rows, fold it like this, like a pipe. Insert the hook here after the 8th row, and here after the 8th row as well. Make sure, yeah, that was not right, like this, straight. Pull the working thread and make a stitch. Here we just make single crochets, making a stitch in every next opening on this side and on the other side along the same row. Make sure it's the same row, it's not in the diagonal, it's straight in the same row. So make sure that you haven't made a mistake here, and just make single crochets till the 8th row on the other side. Go and work in single crochets in each, again you see, in the diagonal, and work tight, rather tight, so that the handle won't stretch too much. and you see it will get such a rounded shape. Go on, and then I'll show you how to finish this row. So here you have to count also 8 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we work till this point. So now we have finished the handle, and we have only to hide the free ends. When you wear the bag, the handles will be like this, not with this side, but with this side. You see? They should be inside, like this. When you wear it like this, it will be really handy on the shoulder. So pay attention. And now we need to hide all the free ends that we have here. Here, for example, I see that perhaps I would make one more stitch just to make it a little bit tighter, to fix it better several times. Then you can hide the free end here along the edge of the handle, and then sew it like we did with all the other free ends. Likewise you do with all the free ends that you have. You hide them and sew them, and they will remain put there. You have to sew because this puffy yarn starts fraying, so you have to sew it for sure. Make several stitches here and then cut the edge. And sew the very end. You see the very tip. To stop it from fraying, you sew the very tip of this yarn as well, just to make sure. It won't be visible on this yarn. It's really easy to sew these free ends because they're absolutely invisible. That's it. So I don't make knots, I just cut the sewing thread, and like this you have to fix all the free ends like we always do, and then we'll make the lining. So now I'll show you how the bag looks without a lining, how we measure it, and how we make a lining into this bag. So first of all, if you have enough fabric for the bag to make the lining, you can make this lining made of one piece of fabric. I have a big piece of fabric, but if you don't have enough fabric, you'll have to make a seam. You measure first the circumference of the bag here. I'll show you. So start here where the side seam is. Follow the line where you're going to make the lining. I'll skip one row and sew the lining here along this one. So start measuring here, remember where you have started, and then you measure this with measuring tape like this along the perimeter, along the circumference of the bag. You go here. When you have the seams, you also measure it like this, because they also take some space. You have to count them. And so you go all along to measure your bag. So I get exactly till this 134 centimeters. So I'll put it down 134. So my piece of fabric will look like this. Here will be the width, and here will be the height of it, so that 134 centimeters we divide by 2, that will be 67 centimeters is the width, yeah, 67 here. But we need to add some seam allowance plus 3 centimeters, half, 1.5 on each side for the seam allowance. It makes 70 centimeters. So the width of my fabric will be 70 centimeters, and the height, if you have one piece like I do, if you have a big piece of fabric, then you measure your bag in the center, somewhere in the center, here where you start making the lining, and go all along to the bottom. Go along the bottom also measure these seams, so that here you finish where 77 centimeters. So you can add a little bit more, make 80 for example. Yeah, you can make 80 because it's sharper and you have to have a little bit of allowance on the bottom. So 80 centimeters. Also add 3 centimeters for the seam allowance, and we get 83 centimeters. That's the size of the fabric. If you have 2 pieces of fabric, one and the second one, if you don't have a big one, then they will be 70 centimeters here, and in the width they will be 80 divided by 2, that's 40. So each will be 40 plus 3 for the seam allowance, because you'll have 2 seams on each side. That will be 43 and 43. Cut the pieces, either 1 or 2 pieces, depending on the size of the fabric that you have, and I'll show you how we make it. So in this bag I'm going to use this nice leopard lining. It's so big that I can't even show it to you. So it is 67 centimeters in width. I take some sewing pins, and first I fold it on top 1.5 centimeter and insert the sewing pins. And so we move along. I do this to make a nice seam. You can maybe make a seam if you can, but I prefer to make sure that I fold it right. So I will fold it, then I'll make a seam. And so now you make a seam all along this line, all along the sewing pins using sewing machine. Likewise, we fold and pin and make a seam on the other side here, where it's going to be the top of the lining. So I have made 2 seams here. I have pinned the fold, and if you want to add a label after you have pinned it, you put a label in the middle of the lining on one of the sides and sew in the label. So make these seams and we'll meet after this. So I have made the seams on this side and on the other side on top of the lining. Now we'll make the sides. If you have one whole piece of fabric, you fold it like this, right side to right side, wrong side facing you. If you have 2 pieces, then you will make likewise, but you will make a seam here as well. And now you have to pin in place sides like we have just done and make a seam. So I take sewing pins and fix it. Better to start fixing from this edge so that it's nice and the edges are matching, and then you pin it all along here and make a seam along 2 sides of the lining. I pin it approximately 1.5 centimeter, as this was my seam allowance. And also here. So I have made these sewing pins, and now I'll make seams. If you have to make the seam on the bottom, you also make it here. After you have pinned the sides, you will make this row here, this line along the edge, and then I'll show you how to make the corners and our lining will be ready. So after you have made the sides and the bottom, if you need, you now open the lining like this, make a corner so that all the sides of this triangle are the same, and you need to find the right place. The width of bottom is about, let me see, here you have the side, so you fold it like this, like a triangle, and you need to find a place where if you have a seam here, you will also have a seam here in the center, right where this seam on this side. So now we need to place the ruler so that here you have 20 centimeters. That's the width of the bottom. You measure the bottom that you have made in your bag. So I'll fix it in place where the 20 centimeters are. I have fixed it here. So on this and on the other corner as well, you open it, make a triangle that has same sides, make this line where the 20 centimeters will be, and pin it in place and make a seam here and on the other side. And our lining will be ready. So make 2 seams and I'll show you how to sew it into the bag. So I have made the seams on the corners as you see here and there, and the lining is absolutely ready. Now we'll insert it into the bag. That's how it looks inside. You see, these corners formed the bottom, so they make a rectangular bottom. All the free ends you cut, and I'll show you how I sew in the lining because I have a special method that is absolutely invisible. So last stage will be sewing in the lining, so put it inside the bag, and I'll show you my method. It's my super seam, which makes it absolutely invisible. So first, insert lining into the bag. As this lining is really huge, it's a big shopper, then I'll take some sewing pins and pin it in place so that it remains where I want it to be. So now I'll take sewing pins and I'll start here where this label is. If you have a label, then you need to find the center on one side and put it there so that it's in the center or where you want it to be. I want it to be in the center between the handles, so I put it here, and I decided to make it 2 rows here, skip 2 rows and then start sewing in the lining. So here, pin first here, and then you need to stretch it, spread it inside the bag, and you move along like this. Pin it in place here and there. Here, for example. The more pins you add, the better it will be for you. Easy it will be to sew it. Here, be careful where you have this seam. Don't skip it. Spread it so that it's nicely here. And after this, you can start sewing it in. So I have pinned my lining in place. Now it will remain where I have put it. And now we can start sewing it. We take some needle and thread with matching color and we start sewing it here. I'll take the first pin off. So first I pierce it into the base of the bag and fix it. And now I'll show you the principle of sewing. Here we have this top edge where we have folded it, right? So we pierce the lining straight into the top here, straight into this edge, and make a little seam. Horizontally, yeah? Pierce it horizontally along this edge and make it 5 to 7 millimeters. That will do. That will be your step. Tighten it a little bit. Now you pierce it here into the bag. Just pierce it through to the other side. Here you make the teeny tiny stitch almost the same place and then pierce it back to the wrong side. Here you make it a little bit further to the left. Yeah? Here you make a little step and then again you pierce it into the very top of the lining. I'll show you a close-up so that you can see. So you pierce it into the very top of the lining and then pierce it through the base of the bag. Tighten it, don't forget to tighten it. Make sure that you sew it on one level along one row edge. And here make a tiny stitch and go backwards. Here you make it in diagonal to the left like this, you see? And so you move along till you have sewn all the lining. And so you sew the lining to the bag absolutely invisibly. Pierce it through the base and then back. And then when I have sewn all the lining into the bag, don't hurry, take your time, and your bag will be ready. So thank you for watching. I wish you much joy while making this bag, and be patient because this is really time-consuming thing. And then we'll meet when I have sewn my lining in. So I have sewn all the lining in the bag and now it's ready. I have finished it here where I have started. I have hidden the free end. You see that's absolutely seamless. So now we have such a nice shopper with cool lining. I think it looks really nice. Now our teddy, our softest teddy bear, is ready. And it's a really huge and cool shopper bag. So thank you for watching this lesson. I hope that you will also make such a bag for yourself and you will enjoy it. So thank you for watching and see you. Bye! That was Oksana Rudko from La Accessory brand.